What's up, guys? It is Patricia from TarantulaHeaven.com. It is Tarantula Tuesday, and we are today talking about the common bug that you should not, under any circumstances, feed your tarantula. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. We put out videos every single Tuesday about tarantula facts, tarantula tips, weird stuff about my tarantulas, weird things that I've observed about tarantulas, questions I have about tarantulas, anything tarantula related. Especially observation stuff. That is what we cover here, and if you are into that, please consider subscribing. And if you're back, thanks for tuning in. I hope that this will be really useful to you. So, as of right now, we are still in the coronavirus quarantine, and something that a lot of people have voiced concerns about is the fact that they can't go to their local exotic store, they can't get food for their tarantulas. Throughout this whole thing, I've, I guess, noticed that having an elderly rose hair has its benefits, because this girl is elderly and she can fast for a really long time, and she's really good at fasting. So that wasn't really necessarily something that I was too concerned about, because I've seen her go for over a year, I think over a year and a half actually, without eating, and she's been totally fine. And thanks to these fasting periods, she's out of one now, but before that she was in one for about 6 months. And because of that, I actually now have a dubia roach colony, because I bought her quite a few roaches, maybe like 5 roaches. Then she stopped eating, and it gave them a chance to reproduce. And now I have a few generations of roaches. Not something that I ever wanted to have, by the way, because I don't really like Spidey's food. I don't really like roaches. But now that I can't go and get her food and she is eating, I'm really thankful that I actually do have my own little colony right now. So having a picky rose hair has its perks. And while that wasn't something I had to worry about during this unfortunate pandemic, a lot of other people were really worried about what they would do during this time when they couldn't get to their pet store. Now, fortunately, a lot of breeders or people who ship these bugs were actually still in business, still shipping out these things, but it was risky business, because during this whole pandemic, shipping and postal services and things like that were also at risk, or not really running as they usually are. So that might have been something that people were very worried about. So for people who couldn't really rely on getting these feeders in a timely manner, or were really worried about getting their tarantulas any food, some people were talking about taking matters into their own hands. And so I wanted to create a video that would greatly discourage that. One of the ideas that came up was, can I feed my spider something from outside, or if I see a bug around the house? That would kind of make sense if you're really worried about your spider, but I want to discourage against that, because that's actually really dangerous, and that is the whole premise of this video, the bug that you should not be feeding your tarantulas under any circumstances, even during a pandemic. So you should not feed your tarantula bugs from the outdoors ever. One of the main reasons is that there's a lot of stuff that we do outside to our lawns, to our plants, a lot of things. So things like pesticides or chemicals, things that we treat our lawns with. These are all things that you don't want to expose your tarantula to. And bugs could also have parasites or diseases. Insects are not immune to those things. Things can happen. They can be sick. So there are a lot of really nasty things outside, and you definitely don't want your tarantula to be impacted by them, and you don't want to be introducing that into your tarantula collection for sure. The same could be said for your household bug or cockroach. These guys might not be exposed to pesticides necessarily, but we use a lot of chemicals in our home, things like cleaners, air fresheners, fragrances, paints, pest killers, or things like that. So these are all things that you also don't want your tarantula to ingest just because you're feeding them a household bug. So this is the reason why I discourage this, taking matters into your own hands and catching your tarantula food outside or inside. Tempting, yes, makes logical sense, but when you think about it from a safety perspective, it's certainly a terrible idea. So feeders should definitely come from people who keep these feeders and grow them in a stable, clean, safe environment. So only getting your tarantula's food from people who actually breed these feeders and take care of them. A good seller of these feeders will be able to care for them in a way that provides a stable environment, a clean environment, an environment where they're not exposed to any of these harmful chemicals, and keeps them healthy. So basically these bugs that are being sold by these sellers have been cared for, haven't been exposed to much, they are healthy, and they probably won't put your spider at risk. And because they're healthy, they're probably going to arrive to you in good condition. Now, if you can't get any feeders, if you're living in a place where your regular people aren't shipping right now, or things have happened, or there's a delay in delivery, and maybe your feeders aren't going to arrive live because of that, or your package got lost, things are just kind of chaotic right now, so there's really no guarantee of anything. But if you can't get feeders, it's not the end of the world. Tarantulas are incredibly hardy creatures who actually can go quite a bit without food if they have to. Your tarantula can actually be fine in going without food for a few weeks, as long as they have water. Water is much more important for your tarantula's survival, and a few weeks without food will not kill them. A few months without food probably won't kill them, to be honest. Spidey, for example, regularly goes 6+ months without food, and she still stays healthy and plump. She's even gone over a year without food and still stayed very healthy and very plump, normal molts, regular eating when she felt like it again. So it's not the end of the world if you can't get feeders for a little bit. Your spider's probably going to be okay as long as you give them water. And slings, which you might be worried about because they tend to need to feed more regularly, they'll also be okay if they can't eat for a few weeks. So you don't need to panic. You have time to find a good option that's going to be safe for you and your spider. So what I have learned through this whole experience, and if I had any advice for tarantula owners, if this ever were to happen again, and hopefully it never does, because my heart goes out to everybody who is struggling during this pandemic, whether it's financially, health-wise, grief-wise, if you've been impacted and lost somebody. If we ever go through an emergency like this, or even as we're still going through it, if you can get your hands on some dubia roaches, that would be my advice. Because what I have seen through this and watching people go through this struggle was that it was really lucky of me to not have to worry about this because of the way that my roaches have just reproduced so rapidly. And I didn't intend to start a colony, it just happened. So I think that really speaks to how easy that it is to actually do this and how little effort you have to put into it. I know that a lot of people prefer to feed their tarantulas crickets. My complaint about crickets, especially right now and going through a pandemic, is that in my experience, even if I got 12 crickets to start off with, in 2 weeks they would all be dead because they're just kind of hard to keep alive. Even if you're providing them with food all the time and good conditions, they are more likely to eat each other and attack each other, and they just seem so much less hardy than the roaches. I could leave the roaches alone with some apple slices for quite a bit, and the cannibalism will be very minimal, and they'll just do their own thing. It's really easy to keep them alive, so I think that it makes it much more easy to start your own colony and to get your own supply of roaches from your original roaches. And the roaches reproduce pretty quickly too, I guess in my case at least. So that would be my advice to everybody. If you're worried about supplying your tarantulas with food, start your own colony. I mean, in the end, even if you're not going through a pandemic or other emergency, at the very least, you'll save some money and not have to worry about getting your tarantulas food for a while. Right now, I have big roaches, medium-sized roaches who are growing pretty quickly, so soon they will be about the size that Spidey needs again. And I have some babies too, which I can use for my sling. So now, thanks to my reproducing cockroaches that I never really wanted to have, but now I'm really grateful for, I have a few different sizes that I can choose for depending on my tarantula's needs. So if you've got quite a few different tarantulas and you have them at different sizes, that would be a really great idea. And it's just always good to, feel self-sufficient and not have to worry about these things when an emergency hits. So I'm really grateful for that. And, if you're getting the food anyway, if you have to give your spiders food anyway, start some do be a roach colonies while you're at it. You might as well. It'll save you some time and money in the long run. And you really don't have to put a lot into it. Roaches are, so they'll survive almost anything. So it's pretty easy to take care of them. Not like the crickets or worms who die really quickly in my experience. So I hope this is really helpful for you. This is just my experience and my advice. I think it makes sense, especially with the times that we're going through right now, where a lot of things are still closed, at least in my state, and it's not business as usual at all. So that's my advice for the times right now. I hope all of you are well. Hope this was useful for you. Please let me know how you're doing and how you're getting through this pandemic with your tarantulas. I hope that you all continue to be safe and healthy. And my heart goes out to anybody who's been severely negatively impacted. I think we've all been impacted in some way, but I hope that you and your loved ones are well. And I will see you next week for another episode of Tarantula Tuesday and another informative video. Take care.